What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Fitter Food Radio. This is episode 100, 206. My God. And of course, it's me, Matt Whitmore,
And me, Keris.
Keris
Mm.
Marsden. Um, well, the sun is shining once again in Portugal.
Finally.
Thank Fuke,
How,
as they
how
say.
was it? About 6 weeks, or am I exaggerating?
It
Felt
felt,
like 6 weeks of
yeah.
constant rain
Well, to be fair, I've been back from South Africa coming up to 3 weeks now. I was away for nearly 2 weeks, and you said it rained
most days.
most days that I was away, so it
Well, there
can't
you
be
go.
far off.
5 weeks at least.
I mean, you do like to exaggerate, but it sounds like
I can't remember sun.
you're on the money. You're on the money, yeah.
But I have to say, because obviously it's a year since we've been in Portugal. So when we landed last year, you went back home to the UK to
Mm.
pack up some stuff, and I had like about, I think it was about 4 or 6 weeks on my own, and it was torrential rain. And I
Yeah,
kept telling my dad and you, and I was like, there's power cuts and the roof's leaking, and it is like it was so damp. You'd wake up like, when you're in a tent
yeah,
and you're like wet when you wake up. Anyway, obviously this year it's great because we're more prepared. So we've got dehumidifiers and
yeah,
we'd got some of the leaks sorted, not all of them. But what I noticed was like last year, the weather really, really did affect me. And I don't mean because we just come from the UK and so we hadn't had any sun, but just generally, I would wake up, see what the weather, or look at the weather forecast, and that determines my entire mood state. Whereas this time, it's been frustrating because it's actually quite hard to walk the dog.
yeah.
So like these are like big downpours, and occasionally we've been caught, but it's not the sort of rain where you go, come on, let's just brave it, let get a brolly. Like literally, poor Hamish gets
I
like
know.
absolutely, he doesn't want to go out. He's like soaked. But the
Bless you.
logistics of coming back and everything's drenched, and then you've got to like trying to dry it. And obviously, we're trying to keep the property relatively dry anyway. So that's the reason I keep whinging about it. But mood hasn't actually been a problem. And I know the next thing people will think, well, yeah, because you've had like
Yeah,
345 days of pure sun or whatever. But it's not because we haven't really had that much sun for like 3 months now. Do you see what I mean? And I know more sun is coming, but we have I, basically I've been doing a lot of mindset stuff. So I'm trying not to let the weather determine my mood.
yeah,
Do you see what I mean?
yeah.
And it has worked. So actually, the rain hasn't bothered me. I don't wake up and go, I used to wake up and go, I have to run today to have a good mood,
Mm.
or I have to go to the gym to have a good mood, to be able to have some endorphins, to be able to focus at my computer and do work all day. Do you see what I mean? So do something that maybe you didn't want to do. And that's kind of gone. Like the annoyance is literally just the amount of logistics involved with rain and slipping over quite a lot on the tracks that we
Yeah.
walk on. Like literally, I've stacked it
I
about.
suppose that is the other thing. We are surrounded by like dirt tracks, so it does get quite sloppy underfoot. And one thing I didn't think I would need in Portugal was wellies,
Yeah,
but
you do.
turns out you do. But it's a funny one, the old weather, isn't it? Because I'm like you, I've never been one to moan about the weather. Um, but I would say, I think I said before that it did start to affect me a little bit mood wise, that kind of like last year that we were in the UK, because it just felt a bit relentless.
Yeah.
But um, it's interesting how many people here have been moaning about the weather because it has been particularly wet. And I'm
Oh,
like,
it's more hated here because a lot of people have come here just for
for the weather.
sun and surf. So they're
But
really
again, it's
frustrated
like
with it.
I'm like, have you heard yourselves? Like
Yeah.
we have great weather pretty much 10 months of the year,
Yeah, yeah.
and yet we're still moaning for that little bit, that little percentage of the year that's wet. And don't get me wrong, even the locals have said this is kind of wetter than normal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just always a bit like, come on, people, like we're fine weather is coming. It's just
Well,
this little bit.
there's another piece of information that's quite helpful is I'm doing a course at the moment on chronic pain,
Yeah.
but chronic pain in the sense of and chronic illness. There's a whole chapter on the weather because if the weather makes you worse, it's actually a sign that this is more related to your sensory perception. So you are genuinely worse in poor weather because there's been some kind of program set up for that. Do you
Mm.
see what I mean? So if you did have worse symptoms and it happened to be winter, you then start to run a program and then your symptoms worsen in the winter. So but the mind did that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the mind then waits for the cue it's winter or sees the weather forecast and then it genuinely upregulates inflammation and pain signaling. It's really fascinating. But it's a sign, it's used on the course that I'm doing where they're saying you basically have a structural element to health where we have to rule out, oh, I've got I don't know, like a meniscus problem in your knee. Do you see what I mean? From all the running that you've been doing.
Hmm.
But if all this stuff starts coming back clear, and even with things like osteoarthritis, which everybody has by our age to some degree, if you start to see changes in your symptoms quite significantly related to the weather
Hmm.
or stress or being with certain people, do you know what I mean? Or work or sitting and things like that, then there has to be some kind of assessment as to how much you've now developed a program for that. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you started to believe sitting
Association,
is
isn't it?
dangerous and you have an office job, you get more and more pain coming because you're going, well, I've got back pain and I've got to sit in an office all day. So your brain will, they've actually shown this, the stress that you will feel over that and the stress of maybe your job as well, it activates a part of the brain that is linked to pain signaling. So it kind of doesn't, the brain doesn't really know the difference, as we've said, between like, running from a lion, it being January, like your boss you don't like, I don't know, the stressful situation at home. It doesn't know the difference, but it knows it could turn up a symptom because you're not very safe right now. And your nervous system is going, oh, something's kicking off. So I'm going to
Yeah.
turn up that. And the more that you then shine the torch on it, the worse it becomes. So if you start to tell yourself, I hate the rain, it really affects my mood, watch your mood get worse and worse
Hmm.
and worse. So what I started to tell myself was, it is the rain. I'm neutral to it. It does not affect my mood. And I don't need to do anything like go for a run. So I don't
Yeah.
need to do anything was my sentence. And I repeated this, repeated this, repeated this, repeated this. But I've done this with so many things because we had like bad weather last year, didn't we? It's like if I
Yeah.
outsource my mood to the weather, we're in
Yeah.
trouble. Like especially
Kill
with
it.
global warming, we're in big trouble.
Again, it comes back to, like it's something you have no
Control
control over
over. Yeah, yeah.
whatsoever. Like,
So you were, but we were doing it like clients do this with me. So I sit down and say, "What makes your symptoms worse?" And they say things, and they always say stress. So they've actually identified this. But often, what they also say is very loud statements about the future that are not true. So they're almost hypnotizing themselves into illness or into staying overweight forever
hmm,
because of what they've tried in the past hasn't worked and they believe it won't work again in future and they've often come to you or I for accountability but still turn up and say I still think I'm going to fail at this. I almost don't
hmm,
trust myself. I don't trust my body. I need you to keep me accountable, you to do it for me. And it's like, if you listen to the words you're saying, you're self-hypnotizing yourself into failure. Like, it's really interesting. We actually hypnotize ourselves into stasis of where we are, if that makes sense. I say hypnotize, that's not technically what, but we're
look into my eyes.
yeah, yeah,
Where am
yeah. But
I?
we are. We're like going, you're absolutely, and then you can try and do positive affirmations, but subconsciously you don't believe them. So it doesn't work.
Hmm.
So there is a slight difference between going, I don't mind the weather, it doesn't affect my mood, and then actually believing it. So you have to believe it first, and that's how you then change it at a subconscious level. And I genuinely did think, I don't think the weather is the problem right now when I look at my entire life history.
No.
Like as a kid, I didn't give a
It's
shit
the
about the
weather.
weather.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the weather.
So I was able to get that quite quickly. So I think my subconscious took that very quickly. Whereas there are other areas of life that are quite hard to kind of reframe. Anyway, there you go. Bit of a share from my course, just in case you're sat there thinking the weather. And also,
No, I like this because it's a big one. It
oh,
comes up a lot. Like, when
when
people talk about like SADs and stuff,
yeah,
we've spoken about this before. And so we won't go into like too
which is
much.
seasonal affective disorder, in case anyone doesn't know.
Yeah, I'm glad
Yeah.
you said that because I actually forgotten what it meant. I know it was something
You
along those
remembered the
lines.
relevant bit,
Yeah,
sad.
SADs,
Yeah,
exactly. Just hoped people knew what I was talking about.
yeah,
Um, but it is important because like you said, like we create a lot of these associations ourselves. And the mind is an incredibly powerful thing, but it can really play games on us if we let it,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
But it
I
also does it just to you're absolutely right. It does it on purpose because the thing that is actually bothering us in life,
mm,
we don't want to deal with or we feel we can't deal with. And it could have been something in the past. It could be something in the present. It can be our jobs. It can be relationships. It can be our aging parents. It can be global disasters that are going on right now. Because we feel so powerless, what our brain does is kind of look for something to distract us So this is where we it can create illness, and the term psychosomatic is actually true in that the mind and body come together and create illness. So it's
Mm.
not in your head. A psychosomatic, would you have said you think it's in your head?
Mm.
It's not. The mind and body come together and fire off inflammation and all the and change hormones and things like that because subconsciously you're like, oh my God, this is terrible. I'm in danger. I don't like it. I can't do anything about it. So the mind and body come together and create illness,
Hmm.
or they create distraction in terms of what was the last thing that was quite dangerous or could have been dangerous? Does that make sense? So the way that this would work is if you had had, for example, a huge disaster financially happen in your life, just thinking of like, say you, and you come home and you're like, oh my God, I don't even know what I'm going to do about this. And then you look down and you've got a mosquito bite and it's swelling up. Your brain looks at that and says that is the biggest danger. And then suddenly you've got basically some kind of post-bite infection and you're really sick.
Yeah.
And this is what they're saying is happening with everything from COVID to Lyme's disease to, because it's like, why does one person feel very minor symptoms and one person get these major things? And in a lot of the cases, the brain tried to find out what's the last thing that could have been dangerous. Could have been dairy. Do you see what I
Mm.
mean? Could have been that bite. Could have been a dog walked into the room. And then it creates an immune response. And then it creates a neural pathway for that. And then it repeats it and repeats it and repeats it. So you are having symptoms and you do feel like you're dying and you do have inflammation on blood tests and you do have actual disease processes going on. But the newest research on all of this has started to show that basically they call mind body interventions, which to me doesn't even do them justice because that sounds like a bit of breath work or whatever. But mind body interventions are switching off the neural pathway where your brain identified a false danger. Do you see what I mean?
So sorry, what's the you used the kind of like the financial thing there, and then you went on to the mosquito bite. What was the relevance of the financial thing?
So
Sorry.
when you're going through a really difficult situation that could, you don't really know how to deal with it, and you don't want to feel the emotions that it's bringing up, could be like, it's usually fear, sadness, and anger. Yeah, they're the three that we often don't like to feel.
Yeah.
And you're trying to sort this situation out, and maybe you do sort it out, by the way, but then you get this bite on your foot, and then it swells up a bit.
Mm.
Your brain sees the bite and is a bit like, let's just look at that bite and that focus on that. So it starts to build a neural pathway, and suddenly you're releasing histamine. So this is an actual thing. What you're subconsciously really stressed about is this finance bill. Do you see what I mean?
Mm.
And you might be, like I said, sorting that out with your accountant. But in the meantime, your body's going nuts with histamine, and the bite is swelling. And the next thing you know, you're in bed feeling really sick, and you are genuinely sick. But the brain decided that there's kind of two theories. One was to kind of pull you out of life because life was getting really hard anyway. And
Mm.
two, it actually developed a neural pathway to that bite. And then you kept focusing on that bite. And then you saw it getting bigger. You were scratching it. So then more histamine's being released because you're like, oh, is it an infection? Or do I need to get it checked out? Is this
Yeah.
dangerous? Then you go online and look at ChatGPT or Dr. Google, and it's like, if you get a bite and it does this, then you need to get to A&E quick. Do you see what I mean? And then next thing you
Yeah.
know, fire out more histamine, more symptoms, and then you can actually get sick. And then when you're tested, you do have an infection. But what they're suggesting is the body does like an overreaction to something because there was a deeper stress going on, which, by the way, might have been the 100th one in your life. So your bucket
Mm.
was filling anyway for decades. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then this kicked the bucket over. So this last big financial situation plus the mosquito bite, boom,
Right.
perfect storm. And that is genuinely how people get what was called yuppie syndrome in the 80s, like chronic fatigue or whatever, you know. So, but when they're tested, loads of stuff is showing up on tests, but that's not necessarily the problem, it's the symptom, if that makes sense. Because the brain went into overdrive and just went, you are in serious danger. And then the ways out of this, obviously, there's loads of nutrition and supplements and all sorts of stuff that everyone tries. But another thing that's coming through is brain retraining. So people do like it's like NLP or hypnotherapy, where your symptoms kick in and you go, I'm fine, I'm safe, I'm okay,
Mm.
don't worry, indifference. However, what I've seen is when people do that, they just get sick later on because the biggest problem was not being able to deal with big stresses in life and pushing them down and believing that they determine your future. And then what you get is this like kindling going on in your body where it's like, he's all right now because he's sure that, using the Macarena, he can pretend that, because some of them use the Macarena, by the way. So by using the Macarena, you don't worry about the mosquito bite anymore, and then your
What
immune system calms
what
down
is a
as a
distraction?
distraction because you've got so obsessed with the inflammation and the pain and
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
got an infection. So you come back from the jungle, this could have happened to you because a few of the guys did fall a bit ill.
yeah,
So imagine if you'd have had something swelling up on your foot and then started to look at it and look at it and then felt a bit sick. Like you can actually feel when someone's being sick, you feel sick. It's
yeah,
really
yeah,
easy for
yeah,
our
yeah.
nervous system to kind of tune into someone else's nervous system and be super sensitive.
Well, it's funny because when you were talking about the weather, and I was like saying about like people like moaning, like
Yeah,
if you are
it's
surrounded by
infectious.
people moaning about the weather, it brings you down a bit because you're like, bloody hell, like I was fine, and now you lot just haven't stopped blinking, whinging.
Yeah. I mean, because you
Um,
could say, what's infectious? Is it the disease or the fear of the disease?
yeah,
And right now, I would say fear itself is very infectious. So as I've been going through this process with my own symptoms and looking at healing stuff, I have to be quite careful who I spend time with
mm,
because I don't now because I've actually built like tools in place to get
yeah,
everything just washes over me now. That's the greatest skill you could ever give yourself. But at first, it was like I had to be careful who I told, right, I'm going to go on a trip to a Portuguese town. Like if I told my dad, he'd be like, oh my God, Keris, you'll get COVID, you'll get this sick again, you'll get your
yeah,
gastritis, you won't know where to eat, how will you do? And my dad was only saying that to protect me because I told him
yeah,
that every time I do this, I get COVID or every time we have gone to sea, I've ended up with COVID. But how much of it is me getting there and being like, who,
on
who
high
knows?
alert
Like
and
these infections stay in our body just like cold sore viruses and given the opportunity, will basically capitalize on that and
mm,
come back with the right kind of environment and the right inflammatory triggers. So how much of that is our mind suggesting that this is a dangerous situation,
mm,
this is a dangerous choice we've made, we are now vulnerable, and then the nervous system jacks up and goes up basically to protect you. So our
yeah,
nervous systems are really sensitive and they're always being guided by sensory feedback, but the mind makes the decision at the end of the
hmm.
day, and the mind guides the brain, and the brain drives the nervous system.
Well, it's like we've always said this, like if you've got like an injury or of some sort, and it's constant, it's on your mind a lot. You're like, oh, I can feel it, or it hurts, or whatever. And then, I mean, I had it years ago, and coincidentally, it was with a back issue, and I've actually got a back issue now, which we'll talk about in a moment. But when you have moments where you're like, oh, I just realized I just did that workout with no pain. I didn't even feel it in my back.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
almost minutes later, you feel a niggle.
Mm,
I've lost count of how many times that's happened where I've created awareness around not feeling pain
yeah.
and then felt the pain.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it was almost like that's just happened too many times to be a
Yeah,
coincidence. And I
yeah,
feel like
yeah.
there's something in it there in terms of that kind of like that mind connection. And
Well, this is really interesting. I was telling you some of these, when you look at some of the research now and the people that are writing about chronic pain, I've got lots of clients with chronic pain and chronic symptoms. So I'm often kind of looking at the research. There's so many examples of where people end up in accidents. So the best one is this is a true story in the UK of a on a building site, a guy basically
oh
ended
yeah,
up with a nail falling into his boot. And everyone saw it and it looked like it had gone straight through his foot and stuck out the other side.
falling into his boot.
Yeah, so somehow I think it fell down, went through his shoe. So I don't know what, like using a nail gun or something. I can't remember
Oh
anyway.
right, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the nail went right through his shoe.
Went through his shoe,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
And he screamed, and everyone was like nearly passing out. And they got him to hospital, and he was screaming and screaming and screaming. And when they take the boot off, it had missed his toes and gone between his toes. And so there was no injury. But of course, like he was experiencing pain and a shock,
Yeah.
like a shock, a kind of response to it.
Or he knew what he was doing. He just wanted a day off.
Yeah, probably. He did the nail
Yeah.
himself.
Yeah.
He spread the toes. And then a similar story of a case in America where a guy actually did shoot using a nail gun a nail through his hand, saw it, but was on his own in a garage and managed to get in the car and drive to the hospital with no pain whatsoever because part of his brain knew if you're to survive this, you cannot have
Mm.
pain. So it didn't send the pain signal at that time. Whereas the guy on the building site had everyone there to help him. So the pain was there to basically make sure that he got that help and got rushed to hospital and got seen really quickly in the brain. But the mind had seen the nail go through. It
Yeah.
wasn't even registering. So pain, we think we feel pain in our hands and feet. Pain is all in the brain. And that's what they're now demonstrating with the science. It's really powerful. And it
Well,
made me think of,
I suppose that is why, like, like different people seem to have different pain
course,
thresholds.
yeah, yeah,
And it's like, well,
yeah.
if I,
You're either burning or you're not burning, don't you?
yeah, it's like, if I chop two people's arms off,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
why can one tolerate it more than the
Yes,
other?
yeah, yeah. And
Um,
actually, when you look at certain, like, what I've noticed is even like temperature tolerance is very similar. So that's all detected kind of it's the brain that makes decisions on that. So
mm,
when I've noticed people who are quite sick, they have poor temperature regulation for sure, but also very really sensitive to pain, sorry, temperature, and they either hate being cold or they hate being too hot. And but it gets really stressful for them to have that. And this is definitely something where they're like they've developed some kind of sensory reaction to that. Because we'll be in a room and my mum will be like, I am so cold, and we're like, we're sweating, we're all like peeling our jumpers off, aren't we? And she's like, I'm
yeah.
freezing, you know. So there's there to some degree you can link this to thyroid and all sorts, and anxiety is a big factor in menopause. But to some degree, there is obviously some like in the mind perception of being cold is super fucking uncomfortable. Do you see what I mean? And
Mm,
like dangerous even, and then being hot, same. Anyway, and one of the things I would say is my temperature regulation as I started doing this really, really improved, especially overnight, the hot sweats, which I think is probably more down to like anxiety and things like
mm.
this. Anyway, just going back to it reminded me when we were walking, do you remember? This is like God over 10 years ago. We were hiking in the middle of
Oh
the
yeah,
countryside and I stepped over
that's right. I remember I was walking 10 years
yeah,
ago.
yeah. Do you remember we were walking?
Yeah.
What a crap start to a
Yeah.
story. Do you remember that? We were hiking 10 years ago
Yeah.
and I stepped over a stile and there
Yeah.
was this loud crack.
Yeah.
And I remember going, what the hell was that noise? And I looked at you and I was like, something's happened to my ankle. But I could not feel anything at that point. No pain. However, everything just suddenly went black. I remember seeing all the black come in, and I never faint really ever in my life. So I was like, "Oh God!" And I said to you, "Like, I'm gonna go. I don't know what's happening, but I'm going." So I think the noise was the thing that triggered me to actually faint at that point. Obviously, blood pressure dropping. Anyway, end up on the floor. You put my legs up against the stile. And then you were like, we're in the middle of nowhere. Something's gone off. You couldn't even touch it because I was like, don't touch it, don't touch it, don't touch it. I was so scared. And you were like, I'm going to have to go and get help and leave you to it. And I don't know if you remember this anyway. I'm lying there and I literally can't feel anything. There is no pain,
Mm.
but I'm so distraught about the noise that I heard
Yeah.
that I'm just like, this is going to be bad.
Well, to be fair, like it was a pretty awful noise. And even like as soon as I heard it, I kind of like spun round and just immediately lifted you up, didn't I? Because I was like, shit,
Get your weight off
get
it.
the weight off it. Because I mean, it did, honestly. The noise, I was like, she broke her ankle.
Yeah.
And but like you said, like you couldn't feel pain. But I think the noise led you into like a bit of a
Oh,
panic.
I thought I was going to throw up through the
Yeah.
noise. But the best bit was when Matt finally goes and calls an ambulance, they said, we can't come to you when I don't know how you even did this. It's like before like GPS and stuff on it, as in like before sending a WhatsApp location. Anyway, the ambulance like we can't come and get you because of where she is. And paramedics are not allowed to carry somebody now over stiles and across fields. It's too dangerous. So we're gonna have to get a helicopter to her. And you felt terrible. I felt terrible. I think
But,
me, you told me this. I was like, I don't want a helicopter.
but to be fair, they did go like the other option is we can get a helicopter, but it is like a huge resource for the
Yeah,
NHS and
yeah.
made it very clear they didn't approve. And I was like, no, no, like I'll carry it.
Yeah, so you said I'll carry her. So you came back and got me. At this point, some walkers kindly sat with me. And anyway, you had to carry me then across fields, didn't you? And I remember
Waded through
waded through
knee
mud. Yeah, yeah,
high
yeah.
slop.
And I was just going, Matt, stop it, be careful, don't move. Da, da, da. But at this point, I could not feel a fucking thing. And then I finally got to the paramedic, to the ambulance car, and he was like, then he looked at it and he was like, holy shit. Like he literally couldn't hold
Massive.
back. It was massive and it was blue and everything. And anyway, I got in the car and he was
How was
like,
your ankle?
he said that's what he said to her like that's a nasty one or something like that, which he probably shouldn't have said. Anyway, I still can't feel anything. So do
Mm.
you remember this? And I end up
Yeah.
going all the way to hospital and I am going, I'm freaking out because my foot looks like an elephant's foot and I can't feel anything. And basically in the
But
hospital,
you say that when they asked you to rate your pain out of 10,
no, no,
what
no.
what did you say?
Oh God, I can't remember. What did I say?
You said you
Nine.
Yeah, you said something,
11.
you said something high, and then but then what was interesting was this was the paramedics that asked you. It said on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate your pain? Obviously, one absolutely fine, 10 like worst pain ever, and I think you might have said like an 8 or something. But they wrote down like a 4 or something on
Oh,
the form.
really?
Yeah, because then when we saw the form and they
Oh,
actually
that's
handed it to the people in the
oh, they
hospital,
did they halve it, do you
they
reckon?
just took it
I'd
down because
forgotten this.
they're obviously thinking, well, she was obviously just in the moment,
Do you know what it,
massively
because you
exaggerating.
know what your brain's thinking? I need this fixed. I need to be seen,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I need to be taken seriously. And like I said, I've got an elephant's foot, so I knew they were going to take it sick. But actually, when we got there, do you remember it was nothing but walkers, footballers, and rugby players in, and
Hmm.
there were some rugby players in stretchers with neck braces
And
on. So
coincidentally,
obviously,
that day we had spoke about me going back to
I know,
rugby.
and I
Do you
thought you're
remember?
not going back because I was literally walking into X-ray and they went, can you come out because we've just had a case come in and it was this rugby player. I don't even want to know, like neck broken.
Yeah,
It
he
was
didn't. He
very,
didn't look good.
no. But the next day, I was at least 12 on the pain scale. Like it was
I saw it was,
insane.
yeah.
Like
But
but 24 hour, and I didn't even take painkillers.
after all, it wasn't a break, was it? It was
No,
the
it was, I popped a capsule of
pops like
something.
the fluid sac
Yeah, something like
in
that.
and that was what the noise was.
Yeah.
And I was like, who
But
knew?
for 3 weeks, I could not walk on that foot. It
No.
was insanely painful. So yeah, anyway, that was just it's interesting that you're like you think the pain is in the place of the injury, the pain
Yeah.
is in the brain. But it also got me thinking back to what you were just saying. When I was obsessed with running and used to run for my mental health, if I was really honest, like I had to run for I needed endorphins and I used them a lot, abused them a lot, I should say. And it's no wonder that I got knee problems, ran through them anyway,
Yeah.
but then had 18 months of like pure tendonitis, both knees. But every x-ray was like, there's nothing. There's nothing. We can't even see that much inflammation. We don't understand. But I was so obsessed with running. This was such a disaster to me that I would obsess every day. I'd be like, I'd do my toilet test. Like, what's the pain? Is it
Hmm.
still there? How much movement have I got? Have they healed in any? Have they not? Do you know what I mean? So I just literally shone two torches on my knees.
Hmm.
And it was only when I can't remember how this happened. I gave up on the idea of ever running again. So people did say you will never run again when they
Yeah.
saw. They actually kept saying it was all down to flat feet, bunions, all sorts of theories, Achilles, blah blah blah. When they started to say you're not going to run again, I just accepted that, got into walking in yoga. I think we got Hamish short. No, no, Hamish, we didn't have Hamish at that point. Anyway, I got into walking in yoga, accepted I wouldn't run, and the pain went.
Hmm.
When we have an agenda and we're forcing an agenda on our body, and this can be a healing agenda, like how many physios and osteos did I see and
Yeah.
orthotics? I spent thousands, but really interestingly, got to a very similar position with my gut. And I've just been like, right, this all just needs to stop. This
Hmm.
needs to stop. Like the healing process, but also my agenda when I'm healed is not right for my body. So I
Yeah.
do think I think for me the whole journey has been that my body is like, do you know what you actually need to do? Is go right back to when you were 7. Do you know what I mean? Some really difficult things happened in your family and you've never processed it. That's what I've really had to do.
Yeah.
And I could have used the Macarena and I could have used brain retraining to stop the digestive issues, but most of mine happen overnight, which is when your conscious brain is offline, your subconscious is giving you a serving of something
Yeah.
that you have not really addressed. You still fear, and you fear it may affect you in the future. You haven't got comfortable with uncomfortable things happening in life. And that's the bit for me that was missing finally.
Well, we were talking this morning, weren't we, about anticipation and what that can do to you. And I think like thinking about what you just said then, like, because this morning you were talking about it was like it's the anticipation of something that causes almost like
Oh yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
stress response in the body.
Yeah.
Like you with your foot at the time, like adrenaline was well and truly in effect. You couldn't feel anything. But the panic in your head was like, I've broken my ankle. I'm not going to be able to
Oh
run.
yeah, I was
How
already
long's it?
there.
How
Yeah.
long is this going to take to heal?
I'm a personal trainer.
I'm
It's
going to
my
get fat.
living. Yeah,
None
yeah.
of my clients are going to want to train me anymore. Matt's going to leave
I
me.
can't teach spin class. Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
you do, like you spiral,
Yeah.
and I think it's like that's like the anticipation of something, and like it's like anxiety. It's like anticipation of something that hasn't even happened yet, but
Yeah,
your
yeah.
brain has gone there and it's got there really, really quickly. And I was thinking of a similar thing when you said about the pain the next day. Like we all know that when we hurt ourselves, the next day tends to always be the worst, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So naturally, you go to bed going, "Whoa, tomorrow's going to be fun and games." It's almost like you're already amping things up for it, this expectation.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not saying that that doesn't happen, but it's almost like we go there ourselves. And what you said about the kind of toilet test with your knee was really interesting because obviously you go to the toilet multiple times per day, and it's almost like what part of you honestly thought that just the next time you go to the loo
I
is
know
just
the
going to
feeling.
miraculously
It's kind
sort itself out. And but I was the same. Like when I look back, and mine was with my shoulder, and it was I was like constantly testing it, going, I wonder how it is today. Oh no, still bad. What
yeah.
about today? No, no, it's still bad. And you're like, well, no shit. Like, something's wrong and
Yeah.
it's going to take a bit of time. And then when I did something to my shoulder just before lockdown, just before the first ever lockdown, and it was in a bad way. Like I was like, shit. Like there's a lot I couldn't do.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
couldn't do any pressing whatsoever. So this time what I did was I didn't test it at all. I was like, do you know what? Just do all the things you can do pain free, but just don't test it for months and see what happens. And I literally did that for about 3 months straight. Did no push-ups, no shoulder press, nothing. Just lower body, pulling movements, blah blah blah. Went to do a push-up, absolutely fine. Went to a shoulder press,
Yeah,
absolutely
because
fine.
also the biggest thing that they say, this is actually in so the kind of correct name for this is like it's the pain reprocessing. So there's pain reprocessing theory, and there's also like a lot on, some people call it functional neurological disorders, in that you have created a neural pathway to an
Mm,
injury. And there is structural injury, so no one's denying that. But like they often hang around longer and they spread into other joints for this reason that, we often kind of then go to like massage, soft tissue, acupuncture. But for a lot of people, muscle tension is guided by the nervous system. If you're in fight or flight, adrenaline, blah, 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 then we need contraction. When we're not in that mode, relaxation. So what's happening for most of us now is that we're always in some kind of slightly upregulated state because we are either doing things like exercise, work, but even when we're not, we're thinking about those things
mm,
and we're planning. And like you just said, anticipation, but it's more like we're just future proofing all the time. So if our mind is active, our body is active, our nervous system's active, our muscles are active. So what I am seeing across the board with all my clients is this muscle activation is a big problem. Screws the gut, screws the hormones, screws the pelvic floor, screws the natural hormonal rhythm cannot take place. You are not in a safe position to reproduce if the mind is like, no, you're not slim enough. You're not, you don't have enough money. You're not with the
yeah,
right partner. You know what I mean? Like, so the mind's doing that. And in the meantime, your physical body is contracting. Digestion is like nice to have, so that gets shut down. Do you see what I mean? And hormonal stuff, nice to have. It's a bonus thing, shut
yeah,
down. So again, for men, this is kind of manifesting as like, they're having erectile dysfunction, low libido, and same thing for women, like issues with everyone across the board, digestive stuff's going on. And I think the mistake that we then make is think that we can then control the healing process by, right, we're going to do this diet, right, we're going to take these
mm,
supplements, this even this supplement to calm down our nervous system, ashwagandha, or we're going to go and do tons and tons of rehab, really complex rehab programs, and have loads of massage and everything. And if it doesn't work, what happens? We're angrier. We've spent all this money, we dedicated all this time, we're actually
mm,
angrier at the situation. This is a very long way of saying one of the key things. Alan Gordon is one of the guys who talks about this, and he is involved in, the Boulder back pain study, and where they looked at people with all the MRIs of people with back pain, and the ones that had the worst structural problems had the least amount of pain,
yeah,
and the ones
yeah,
that had
yeah,
hardly any structural problems in their back had these huge amounts of reported pain. And he says attaching to outcomes is where we screw up on all of this. So if you get very like, I want my shoulder back so that I can do these things, if you really go upstream, you have to ask yourself, why can Matt not bench press for a couple of months if necessary,
Mm,
or a year? And a year is not very long in your life. If you can't train for a year due to a structural problem and it needs to
mm,
heal, if you cannot give up the gym, then there's a kind of mismatch. There's an unhealthy relationship, and you have a healthy relationship with the gym. But if it's an actual battle, it's your identity,
mm.
and that's when it can become problematic because you're relying on it for the wrong reasons. So then we'll override the body's
Yeah.
request to heal, if that makes sense. Not that I'm saying you need to give up anything for a year,
No, no, but
but
I'm
we should say to ourselves, it'll take as long as it takes. That's
mm.
all we can keep saying.
And I'm right there with you. Like, I've been on that journey myself, because there
Oh,
was
how hard is it being 100 kilo?
absolute
Yeah.
stud of a unit. Oh,
I asked that question because
it's not easy.
when you did your back, I said to you, if you ended up, you know, say it was quite problematic and it needed surgery and you were out for a year, like that would be a big challenge for you because you've had your fair share of injuries. I'm not saying you haven't, but
Mm,
you've never had one that meant you could not train something because you're very good at training
I
something.
don't. Yeah,
Yeah. You would flex your toes 100
I
times if
know.
you needed
Have the
to.
most jacked toes you've ever seen in your life. Has that toe got a six pack? If it has.
Yeah.
I'm glad you noticed.
I've dropped 30 kilos of muscle, but look at this toe.
Yeah.
My before and after toe.
Yeah.
More toe flex.
Imagine.
Can I just also say that when I ever went for assessments, everyone always looked at my bunions and were like, this is your problem. And then gave me the most ridiculous number of exercises to do with bunions,
Mm,
which drove me mad. And you know what? I
yeah.
never did them, and the injuries always healed. And part of me thinks my wiser Yoda self went, wiggling that toe around for that amount of time is not going to fix this.
No.
Maybe running a bit less will fix this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but also as well, it's
Resting your
like
body,
lots of people have bunions, and it's like they're there, right?
yeah.
And yeah, you can have surgery, but that doesn't mean shit. A lot of people have surgery and the bunions come
Yeah, they
back.
do. I got so
Uh,
close, and then I saw someone in a yoga studio, and she said, I got mine done, and my back has been screwed ever since.
well, your mum had hers done,
And it twice.
and they came back.
Yeah.
You know what
And
I
that
mean?
also put me off. Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't.
exactly. And it's like, um, what was I going to say to you then? Like, yeah, so a big part of my journey has been like, I've had my fair share of injuries, like Keris has said. Yes, they're frustrating. Yes, they've stopped me doing what I like to do. But you adapt and you find other ways of training and you work around it, and in time it gets better. That sounds like an oversimplification, but it's true. With time, patience, and all of that, the usual suspects, like things do get better. And that's why when I did my back, it's like I know like right now it's raw, and it's painful, it's uncomfortable, and I just need to give it a little bit of time. But then it's only a matter of time before I'll be able to do stuff again. Probably won't be doing what I was doing just before the back happened, but in a bit more time, then who knows type thing. But the difference now is, like Kerry said, I can acknowledge going, well, that's a bit shit. Training was going really well. I was feeling really strong, I was feeling really good. I now can't do those things at the moment, but it's fine because I've got other things that make me happy. I've got other things that I enjoy, and I'm not reliant on exercise. And that's the big thing because a lot of people still are. And I get it. I get the attachment. I get that it makes you feel good. I get that it helps you manage, like, manage body composition. But
But the identity piece as well. Like if you are someone who exercises, you're known as someone who exercises. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, but it's like, but you'll get it back. You will get it back, and it's like
Actually,
depending on
though,
the
not necessarily, because like you were just saying, you'll get back to where you're meant to be.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And if that is back to right where you were,
Yeah.
or
And I only
or
say that to avoid someone going, I will run that marathon one
yeah,
day, like,
no, you're right. Actually,
yeah.
no, that's a really fair
Maybe you don't
point.
need to once you heal. Like maybe you're not meant to do that. You've
No,
said this about marathons, haven't you? You're not sure now.
yeah, it's. I mean, it's still on my list, like because I do like a physical challenge. I like the physical challenge as well. That's almost kind of goes against what I should be able to do on paper, because of my build. It's like, someone like me doesn't run marathons, if you like, but I've always been quite, what's the word? I've always been quite hybrid anyway, haven't I?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know
yeah.
now hybrid's like a bit of a buzzword and it's quite on trend, but I've kind of always been doing that. I've always loved a bit of endurance, bit of strength, power, building muscle, blah blah blah. Um, whilst we're kind of on the subject of injuries, pain, and all of that, like there is. So I've literally I did something to my back on, was it Saturday morning? Yeah, it must have
Yeah.
been. And there's a few like takeaways that I'd really love to share with you guys because it's really powerful, I think. So anyway, long story short, went to the gym Saturday morning, and I've been having a bit of not back pain as such, but back tightness, and I put it down to just a shit mattress basically. And I've been saying for a long time, haven't I? Must get a new mattress, must get a new mattress.
I think it's stress.
Probably a bit of stress and a shit mattress.
But watching
Terrible,
you,
terrible combo.
watching you, like you've been on that mattress for months and months and months and not
Well,
had.
nearly a year.
Yeah. So that's when it's like
No, no, but
do the evidence piece.
I hear you. But it has got worse over time because it's not a bed, is it? It's a sofa bed, and I think
Yeah.
over time the padding's just kind of gone down a bit because I can feel the metal frame through the
Maybe.
thing.
You, I still think I can sense when you're kind of wound up about things.
No, no, I'm not. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
I'm also like I haven't imagined that the mattress is shit.
Yeah, no, true.
Go, you sleep in it tonight. You tell me how you get on.
I can't talk. I'm like Princess and the Pea with
Yeah,
my
yeah,
setup.
exactly. Well, but anyway, I went to the gym Saturday morning. I'm warming up, did my mobility, building in my sets, and I was on like well, what was set to be my last building set.
Long story short.
Yeah, did I say long story short? I thought I said a short story long.
Just
This is going to be a really short story, but I'm adding detail to drag it out a little bit.
set
Um,
number five. I nearly did
yeah.
6 sets, but I thought, no, I'll stick at five. I
And
almost gave up at
no,
four.
because I was just trying to paint the picture that it wasn't like I was attempting like a max effort squat or a PB or
Injuries never happen though with
no.
that. Because you know why? You're so on it when you're doing a
No, but
PB.
to be fair, like in my defense, like I've always had this thing like I always treat every set the same. So even my warm-up sets, I make the same noises, I get the same amount of tension.
Okay, yeah, fair
Like
enough.
that's just
I
it's
know, but I think if you were going for a 1 rep max, you are also. I don't
yeah,
know. I reckon adrenaline's higher. You're super focused. You probably got more power like
yeah,
in you to
yeah.
manage the
I
lift.
think it's definitely something to be said for that.
Yeah.
Um, and anyway, I did a set and I was like, that didn't feel great on my lower back, but it didn't alarm me as such. And I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do another set on this weight before I build. I just felt like I needed a bit more of a warm up. Anyway, I was doing it was front squats, and as I was coming up, I was like halfway through the rep on the way up, and then I just felt something go in my lower back. I had to like ditch the barbell. I was like shit. And I must admit, like immediately, I went into like a little bit of a panic because I was like, I felt like my back had gone into a bit of a spasm,
Yeah.
and I was a bit like, I don't feel like I can actually move at the moment. And I was like, just compose yourself. And then I was able to like walk a little bit, but I could tell something had happened. And I was like, right, I just need to go home. I did put my weights away first, I'll have you know, because I was there on my own. I still didn't have it in me to just leave a loaded barbell on the floor, even though I did have good reason.
Which is really
Um,
nice, but it's also the only reason I say this is the people that in the pain studies have the worst pain are very good people.
oh, see,
Yeah.
there you go. It's because we can handle it.
No.
Um,
So goodism and always doing the right thing
yeah,
could have made, and in that instance, I said to you, you could have written a note and pinned it up and said, I put my back out. Can someone put my weights away, please?
yeah. No, you're
Only
right.
because you could
You're
have
right.
further injured yourself putting the
Yeah,
weights away. As lovely as that
I
was,
know.
again, and this is where they start to say, like, there's mad links between personality traits and injuries.
Yeah, there you go. No,
That,
you're right. But you are right though, because there would have been understanding there,
yeah,
like because I always put my weights away. But anyway, um,
everything every little thing that happens to you now, I'll be like, stress. It's because
yeah,
you're too
stress.
nice.
You're too nice.
It's
Be like, what's that? Everyone be like,
because of
what's
that
that?
repressed anger.
What's
Let it
that to
out.
that? He's turned to a right arsehole.
But also,
Matt used to be so nice and considerate. Now he just swears at everyone. And
but also one day I'll be like, Matt, it's repressed anger, and you're gonna be like, I'm angry at you, and then bloody banging on about this
yeah, yeah.
personality traits and
You
injuries.
shut up. You're like, there it is. Told you. Told you.
I knew it.
Yeah.
Let it out. Let it out.
It's like when 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 people
Then
like
you're like, oh, gone.
Yeah, 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 that
Back
was
to the
better.
gym.
Who knew? But what was interesting, the reason I wanted to share this with you is because I'm no Zen master here, right? My immediate reaction was to catastrophize the fuck out of it. Straight away, I was like, bloody brilliant. There I go, getting injured on my quest to a 200 kilo back squat. I'm going to be out now for however long, and like, blah, 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 blah. Like, catastrophe, catastrophe, catastrophe. Like, totally blew it out of proportion. And I was like, whoa, I had to stop myself in the moment. I was just sat on the bench in the gym. I was like, what are you playing at here? Like, you don't know any of this. You don't know what the hell's happened. Something has happened for sure, but you don't know what it is. And anyway, like, I got myself back, and then even after that, because you were out with Hamish, and I came back, and then you're like, oh, you're right, and I almost had to correct my language because my immediate response was going to be, I fucked my back, and it's like, no, but you haven't. So it's almost like I corrected myself. I was like, no, I've done something to my back, which is much more accurate, right? And it's like, how often do we use language that is just a massive exaggeration? It's really over the top, it's really reactive. But like Keris was saying earlier, just with our thought patterns, like the language we use is also really, really important. Like, you're not lying, you're not going, oh, I'm absolutely fine, because you're not. But let's not be like, oh, my back's fucked, probably going to need surgery, never going to be able to squat again. Lucky if I even walk, to be honest with you. Like, because that's where the brain
Yeah,
wants to go
yeah.
sometimes.
It's got that negative bias because it wants to basically kind of protect you, but it also, this is the thing that was very powerful when I learned it, is it wants to catalyze doing in you.
Yeah,
You need to fix this. So this is where you get on the phone and you start ringing up for massagers and chiropractors and osteopaths. Like,
yeah,
you need to fix this fast. So we don't trust our body to heal something
mm,
that might be a structural injury or accident. And so when we start to force that process and make it, as I said, our agenda, our terms, this is when the body starts to feel unsafe
yeah,
and ramps up the inflammation, the pain signaling, the maybe spreads it around, maybe moves it. And at the same time, you're developing an anxiety,
yeah,
which is not helping because that's also creating muscular tension. You
yeah,
even said yesterday, I'm tensing because I'm nervous about moving, but also maybe worrying a bit about the back stuff, which is alleviating now,
yeah,
isn't it? And I think the thing that we can practice, which is really powerful, is like acceptance, allowing the symptoms. Don't try and suppress them too much either. You take as much pain as you can
yeah,
because you want to reassure your brain that it's safe and you're not going to do anything. You're listening, you're going to rest, and you're going to do gentle movement. We obviously don't want to be too static, but that you're basically just allowing everything as it is, no panic, and it will then start to turn down the alarms, and there's a likelihood not only will you heal in the way that you're supposed to heal, but you will heal holistically rather than
yeah,
getting to a point of loads and loads of painkillers. Oh, I can just about run again or I train again, and then overriding. Do you know what I mean? So override can sometimes, we need a degree of overriding for sure to not create so much anxiety and stuff over symptoms or pain or injury or whatever. But too much overriding can give this complacency back where we carry on being the old version of ourselves that is quite dictatorial about our body.
yeah,
I want to look like this. I want you to be able to do this. I want you to do this. I want to feel like this. I want this mood. And it's very, you've got so many clauses to feeling good about yourself. And I think that's got really out of control with social media and even the way that like fitness and health is now such a thing.
hmm,
It's not in tribes, fitness and health is not, it doesn't exist. They just are.
yeah, yeah,
And and same for things like the weather. The main concern for an indigenous tribe would be like soiling of ruination of land and crops or flooding
mm,
and the safety of their home with floods and things. They don't turn up and go, it's raining, that really pisses me off today. Do you know what I mean? Their mood is influenced by the people around them and the cultural stuff that they do, like the what are they doing within their daily routine and their life. And it's like, if we're using exercise and health to override all of that and not going to the root cause of why you struggle and
mhm,
why your mood struggles. But the other side, just to flip over to the where you talk about body composition and body image, is this becomes a massive distraction for us to feel safe in society, to feel like we fit in, to feel like we
yeah,
have some status. And that becomes so obsessive that it leads to really poor relationships with our body, poor relationships with exercise, poor relationships with supplement, with health, with food, because we're constantly like, no, no, no. The priority is that I look like this
Hmm.
and have this validation and this admiration and this amount of like I've heard someone call it fuckability. It's
Yeah.
like even when we're 70, you like this is when, we're looking at like our favorite stars of movies and stuff, and they're like having so much work done to
Yeah. Gosh.
anti-age or having Ozempic or whatever. Like overriding, look at the side effects of Ozempic. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but you'll have that with a view that if this can make me more, basically attractive to society, then I'll risk my entire quality of life and my longevity of
Mm.
health to look a certain way. And that's problematic. And that's being driven by social media, like hugely.
Oh no, for sure, for sure. Like, and I think like I know a lot of people that would prioritize getting their training sessions done, to maintain a certain aesthetic
Or a feeling.
or a feeling
Yeah.
over, the pain that their body's in, and
Yeah.
actually getting to the bottom of that pain, and being pain free. And I can relate to it. Like I've done a lot of dumb shit in my time, like and even when like we first got together, you're like, what are you doing that for? With all those like issues that you got going on with your back or your shoulder or your knee or whatever. And it makes no sense at the time beyond it just being something that I enjoy doing and I didn't want to miss out. And I wanted to get that training session done, or I wanted to play rugby and whatever else. And I do get it, but there needs to come a point where you're like, no, no, like my health and longevity and living pain free is really bloody important. And that's why now I can go, like, because I've even had like a couple of friends go like, oh God, like how you gonna feel if you can't train for a bit and all of that. I'll be like, I'll be fine. Like I will be fine, but it's almost like even other people be like, shit, like what's Matt gonna be like? What's he gonna do? And it's like
Who
I
is Matt without
I,
muscle?
I do love to train, but it's not my complete identity.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like I do enjoy training, but I also enjoy moving well and being pain free. And something I have shared over and over again. One thing I do not do with my training, I do not train to manage my body composition. And already in my mind,
Or your mood, to be fair.
no, exactly. Like,
Yeah, you
and
do.
and and I've got a strategy, like nutrition strategy. Will I need to reduce my energy intake? Yeah, well, of course I will, because I'm not going to be training as much. I'm not even going to be walking as much at the moment. But how long that will go on for, I don't know.
But also, if that scares you, there's a problem.
No, no, for
So for
sure,
some
for
clients who
sure.
are really highly active, when I say about what about reducing exercise, they're like, I love my food too much. I can't. I like my food and I won't get away with X, Y, Z. My wine at the weekend, my cake, my sugary treats. I won't be able to eat as much peanut butter. So sometimes it's healthy stuff, but they often tell me this panic.
Mm,
And it's like, okay, so there's not only an over reliance on food, exercise, sorry, there's an over reliance on food for
mm.
mood,
Mood,
happiness, and it's not
mood
about going
board.
out with your friends, it's about drinking wine, so that's we've lost focus there because the company itself should be so nourishing that we drink as much wine as we're supposed to drink and we're not fighting too much. Obviously alcohol is addictive, but the reason we fall into addictive tendencies with anything, because food in itself, most people would say is not addictive. It's a bit of an argument. Processed food obviously more tempting, but the reason we fall into these situations is because we're using them to basically to avoid feeling
Mm,
something. So this is the other bit that I think is really powerful to ask yourself if you're listening and thinking, yeah, that really resonates with me. The strongest skill we can master is feeling really icky, horrible, awkward feelings about what others think of us. So, and by that I mean you'll stop fighting to be perfect with your food and your exercise or your health or your house even, your house has got to be all these things, your job, career, if you can be judged by others and sit with that and feel it. And if someone says, you know, oh, you've put weight on, or someone says you don't look as good as you did, or you look tired, or whatever, I used to think that I had to be like, you listen to Oprah, Brené Brown, all these people. It's like, oh, I have to not care what people think. I've said this on the podcast. You have, yeah?
hmm.
It's not that. You have to allow what people think into you, into your body, if that makes sense. You have to hear them say it, and allow the feeling, which is this mad discomfort, and then sit with it and then make some wiser decisions for yourself. But whatever you do, don't respond or well, really it's not sort of not responding, it's reacting to that comment with actions, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
so because you don't want to feel that feeling of someone rejecting you and criticizing you and not fancying you or whatever it might be, just thinking of where you are in the world right now. You might be single trying to meet somebody, or maybe your parents. All parents are quite critical. Our parents often give us a full-on physical assessment. You look tired, you've put weight on, you've lost weight. Don't
Mm.
they? Like, it's not about avoiding that, it's not about hating that, it's about going into it head on, like literally walk towards it, let someone say it, feel the horribleness of it because it doesn't feel nice, and don't change what you need to do.
Mm.
So if you like to go to the gym 3 times a week and enjoy that and are confident you enjoy that and you do it for what you said, health, longevity, functional strength, so I can get out the bath when I'm 80,
Mm.
and you're doing the right thing, that means you're listening to your body, your pain, your energy levels, all sorts of stuff, and you're consistent with it. And there's no pressure, which means you're more likely to do it. Pressure's the thing that screws us over time and time again with a nutrition plan, with a training plan. It's the pressure to achieve something by this date. But if we're thinking for the rest of our lives, I'm going to eat food that nourishes me, not too much, not going to have all these rules about when I eat, what to eat, all this stuff. I'm going to train so that I can, as I said, get out of a chair when I'm 80. Not for all the other reasons, but to do that, we've got to be able to be ready when someone criticizes us or is way better at everything than us in the gym or is going to twice as many classes. We have to be ready to watch friends lose weight, partners lose weight faster than us, and not change, like react and change
Yeah,
and
yeah.
go at it and go, I'm not trying. And we turn on ourselves. And it's like if you we need to master that skill of trust yourself, trust your body, trust that maybe the size you're supposed to be is a bit bigger than you are, or trust that your body will find the right size for you when you stop fucking getting in the way
Mm.
and trying to be someone else. Like what we're all trying to be, and I've made this mistake for sure, is trying to be someone else that I couldn't even see was happening. So it's like I want to be a happier person, so I run too much. I want to be a healthy person, so like hyper optimize my diet and
Mm.
hyper fixate on it. I wanted to be pain free, so I started doing all this yoga and fascia work and taking all these anti-inflammatory supplements. All of that stuff can help if at top level you're in a very balanced like way with it all. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, for
So
sure.
if you're very non-attached to the outcome,
Yeah.
and like, this is just so I could get back to walking down the street first, and then I'll get back to the gym, and then I'll be cautious. I'll get back to my lifting, whatever, but be very cautious. And you're reading the situation. You've got your mattress now. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
there's no avoidance of emotions in what you're doing or trying to look a certain way. And again, of course, you want to. It's not bad to look at yourself and go, "Oh, I look really good. I've built some muscle. That's fine." But I don't ever see that. I see extremes of that, don't you? It's like all or nothing with the body composition side of things.
Oh, 100%. Like, and it's like, I think for me, like something that was coming up there when you were talking was it's not healthy to have an over reliance on anything.
No,
You know what I
it
mean? Like
never ends well.
you shouldn't be over reliant on exercise for your happiness, food for your happiness, a person for your happiness,
Work is a big one, actually,
work.
but also work for a sense of value.
Mm.
Excuse me. So a lot of my clients, when they can't control the exercise or the nutrition, they start overworking. So they
Yeah.
get a lot of praise, they get, validation in that. And then again, what we're doing is with like the phrase leaky boundaries is really powerful. We are just leeching all of us all over the place
Mm.
to not feel, sorry, the rejection and the criticism. That's what we can't bear. And if you can
Yeah.
master that skill, I do think you're the strongest. You're strong as fuck then, aren't you? Because
Oh,
you can
100%.
ride it out and you can state your needs and you can listen to your body again and you can trust it and you'll find the principles for nutrition and exercise and sleep and everything that just work for you because you've chilled out
Mm.
and you're doing it for you, not for anyone else.
And the thing is, guys, it's like a lot of what we've spoken about, or pretty much all of what we've been kind of speaking about today, mindset, injuries,
Gone all over the
boundaries,
place.
like yeah, but it does a lot of it does come back to your mindset, your thoughts and kind of getting on top of those and having a bit of a mental strategy, if you will, when life does a number on you. You
Because it
know,
always will.
exactly.
And that's
It
the other
always
thing.
will.
You
And
can't have the perfect conditions for everything. It's more like find the conditions to ride out the storm.
exactly. And,
Yeah.
and I think like this is a huge part of what we do with our coaching clients. Whether it's like one to one, our group training plans, like the Strong Humans Project, which has just finished. Another one's about to start, by the way. And it's at the core of everything that we do because nothing else can truly happen without it. And it's simple as that,
You'll just
right?
keep doing more and more plans. You just keep stop
Exactly.
starting, getting into trouble. It's all ego led, and that's the biggest thing that we've been teaching our Strong Humans group at the moment is like try and see when it's the ego, which is always designed for the rest of society, what society thinks of you, how you look to people,
Yeah.
and try and see when it's wiser self. And when it's wiser self, you will eat intuitively, you will
Mm.
exercise intuitively, you will enjoy it, and you stick it. And that's you stick it out forever because it's not a struggle, it's not something you have to do. And everybody's body wants to be healthy. And that's
Yeah.
something I think everyone has lost trust with their body, trust with themselves. And actually, what we keep saying is, no, your body wants to be healthy. We're just not trusting it, giving it the right environment, giving it space, taking it away from the social media pressure. The reason you can't stop working is because, again, there's that mismatch of this defines me, it's my
Yeah.
identity. If I don't have this, who am I? And that's
Yeah.
what we have to look at, that little piece. And then there's always an incredible person there with loads of skills and
Oh,
talents outside
100%.
sitting at a desk for so many hours.
And that's like for us, it's like when you do start creating more awareness around these things and you start putting in that work on, where your head's at, your thought processes,
Yeah.
the stories that you create attachment to, like that's when you do start to trust yourself more.
Yeah.
Like me now with this back thing, yeah, it's frustrating, yeah, it's irritating. Do I wish it never happened? Yes. Do I wish I went to the gym today? I would have loved to, but it is what it is. But I trust me and I trust my body to get better.
Yeah.
And I just need to be patient. I just need to be consistent. And completely
So
back myself.
the thing you start doing if you're doing the deeper work is you respond versus react.
Yeah.
So you respond from a wiser, higher self that always wants your best, has your best interests at heart, has a gut feeling on something. As I said, we override that. And if we react, we go from to ego, which is like old self, negativity, fear, repressed emotions,
Mm.
and just aggressively wants outcomes. And that's the bit that gets us in trouble. We get injured, we get depressed, we get all sorts of stuff off the back of that. So
I always love the only difference between reactivity and creativity is you just need to move the sea.
I thought you were going to say is just see. That would have worked better.
Well, in your opinion,
When you said
subjective.
move the sea, but
Yeah, but it's just as simple as that. It's just simple, isn't it? Move the sea, and
oh, I
you've
see. I see.
you've turned.
But I thought if you said the difference is just see.
Yeah,
See what I mean? It's like see
just
it.
see.
So actually getting insights,
Oh,
watching
that could
yourself.
work. Oh, there we go. We're adding to it.
Yeah.
We're adding to the saying.
Become the sky, not the tornado, and just see that you were getting a spin about some irrelevant shit, and like you were turning this little thing into something huge.
But
Reaction.
but it's true though, right? Like,
Yeah.
like it's so easy to become reactive. And I did in that moment, very briefly, when it was really reactive to the situation. Then I was like, well, no, don't go there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like create that awareness around it. But another long episode, guys, but hope you've enjoyed that. And as always, if you just come away with like one or two things that really resonated with you that you feel you can put into action almost immediately, then we kind of feel like our job has been done. And I think all of us here have probably had our own experience with injuries and setbacks. And I think there's a lot of things around the mindset that we can resonate with, especially around the kind of reactivity side of things. So, yeah, hopefully there's been something in there, guys. But as always, any questions whatsoever, you know where we are. Please do reach out and we'll do our best to help you where we can.
Bye bye.
See ya.